Bloodshed on Easter. Nearly 300 people are killed after terrorists target churches and hotels in Sri Lanka. We have the latest. Standing firm. An appeals court issues a ruling in the case of a Jesuit priest who denied an atheist group's request to deliver a secular prayer on Capitol Hill. Pressure on Tehran. The Trump administration issues new sanctions against countries that buy oil from Iran. And the Lord's resurrection, why experts say they can prove Christ really rose from the dead. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, April 22nd, 2019. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining me from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Sri Lanka is invoking wartime military powers just one day after Easter bombings at churches and luxury hotels massacred dozens of Christians. Nearly 300 are dead and 500 injured, including 4 Americans. One was a 5th grade boy who attended a prestigious school here in Washington. It's being called a well-coordinated terrorist attack by a Muslim jihadi group that may have had help from ISIS. We will be joined by phone with Sri Lanka's Cardinal Ranjith, who has visited one of the bombing sites. But first, correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee joins me with more from the Sri Lankan embassy in Washington. Good evening, Wyatt.
Good evening, Lauren. Authorities in Sri Lanka have already arrested 13 people in connection to the Easter bombings, but they say there will be more arrests likely soon. Tomorrow, the country will have a national day of mourning, and you'll notice the flag here at the embassy is at half-staff. World leaders are offering their condolences and their support to the people of Sri Lanka. That includes President Donald Trump and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who called the Sri Lankan Prime Minister this morning. The president and the secretary vowed to help Sri Lanka bring the terrorists to justice.
Families are mourning loved ones who were lost in the Easter Sunday bombings in Sri Lanka, the deadliest violence since the country's civil war ended a decade ago. This Catholic man still visibly upset from yesterday's bombing, praying just outside of St. Anthony's Shrine, one of the country's best-known Catholic churches, and one of 3 churches attacked by suicide bombers. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo reflecting on the devastation.
What was supposed to be a joyful Easter Sunday was marred by a horrific wave of Islamic radical terror, bloodshed.
Pompeo confirming some of the victims were American citizens. Authorities say a local jihadist group is to blame for Sunday's series of coordinated attacks across the island country, which is located near India in South Asia. The terrorists targeted 3 luxury hotels, apparently going after Christians celebrating Easter. Other targets included St. Sebastian's Catholic Church in the eastern part of the country and a Protestant Zion Church in the west. The Christian population in the Buddhist majority country is only about 7%, and most of those are Catholics. Celebrity chef Shantha Maya Dunn and her daughter were among those killed. Maya Dunn's daughter posted a picture of the family at an Easter breakfast just minutes before a bomb hit the Shangri-La Hotel in Colombo.
E a tutta la Chiesa Archidiocesana di Colombo.
Pope Francis says he's praying for the victims and wounded, asking the faithful in St. Peter's Square to pray to the Virgin Mary. The Sri Lankan government is vowing to wipe out terrorism, but some locals are disheartened after the country's health minister admitted they failed to heed multiple warnings earlier this month from international intelligence officials that radical terrorists were planning to attack churches on Easter Sunday.
Many are criticizing the Sri Lankan government for shutting down several major social media websites. The government said it wanted to stop the spread of false information. Today, the Knights of Columbus pledged to send $100,000 to the Catholic community in Sri Lanka to help rebuild and repair the churches. Lauren?
Those pictures were just devastating. Wyatt, thank you. Wyatt Goolsbee reporting from the Sri Lankan embassy in Washington. Sri Lankans were on edge this morning as police detonated a bomb found in a van near St. Anthony's Church in Colombo. The shrine remains under heavy security. Sri Lanka has a devotion to St. Anthony. Local media report it dates from the 16th century when Catholics had to practice their faith in secret. The shrine includes a relic of the saint. And joining me now is Cardinal Malcolm Ranjith. from Colombo in Sri Lanka. Thank you so much for joining us. As the funerals begin, Cardinal, how is the Catholic community handling all of this?
The Catholic community is very much troubled and disturbed by what happened on Sunday. And it is really a very sad situation because we lost so many valuable lives. In both churches, nearly 200 people were killed. And that is a huge amount of people. And they went to the church to celebrate a religious festival. That is the Easter Sunday. And to be massacred in that fashion without any rhyme or reason is something that is unacceptable and absolutely horrible. So the community has suffered quite a lot because of this, what happened.
Cardinal, you called on officials in the beginning to mercilessly punish those responsible for the attacks, saying only animals can behave like that. Later, you called for tolerance. Do you regret your initial words?
Well, when I saw so many bodies, I was completely moved and disturbed, and that's why I mentioned the word animals. I have no reason to disregard or to think that the animals may be better than human beings. But it's a spontaneous reaction that came from me. I don't intend to downgrade the dignity of the animals either. These are people who are worse than animals.
St. Anthony's Shrine holds a significant historical presence. The church was declared a national shrine. St. Anthony's tongue is there. Were you able to save the relic? Tell me more about what happened inside the shrine.
I heard yesterday around 9 o'clock in the morning the first news about an attack on the church, and immediately I rushed there and I wanted to enter and see, but the police did not allow me because they said a lot of devastation inside and many bodies, and also they said that they are thinking that there is another bomb or two inside, therefore that I should not go inside. From the outside I saw a lot of devastation inside the church.
Do you know if the relic of St. Anthony was saved?
Yes, the relics, and there is a miraculous statue that also was saved, and there was another beautiful statue almost at the point of the bomb explosion, but nothing happened to the statue. So all these statues have been saved, and the relics.
Cardinal Malcolm Ranjith, Archbishop of Colombo, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Okay, bye-bye.
In the Philippines, part of a Catholic church collapsed about an hour outside of the capital of Manila. 3 people are dead. A 6.1 magnitude quake sent people fleeing from office buildings and closed an airport in an area north of Manila. It also caused extensive damage to St. Catherine Catholic Church. One report says that the church's bell tower collapsed. The Archbishop of Paris celebrates Mass on Easter Sunday, and he honored firefighters who helped battle the devastating blaze last week at Notre Dame Cathedral.
Leur courage, et nous les remercions d'avoir préservé l'essentiel.
Archbishop Michel Opati celebrated the service at St. Eustache Church in Paris. He thanked the firefighters and the chaplain who saved the Blessed Sacrament from the blaze. Officials hope to rebuild Notre Dame Cathedral, one of the most iconic churches in the world, within the next 5 years. And here in Washington at the Basilica, in conjunction with the Embassy of France, there will be a benefit concert this Friday featuring Notre Dame's organist, Johann Vexo. Vexo was playing at Notre Dame when the fire started. An appeals court throws out the case of an atheist who wanted to offer a secular invocation during the House of Representatives opening prayer. It's the second court to defend centuries-old tradition. The D.C. Appeals Court says legislative prayer can be religious. The court points to the Supreme Court upholding similar prayers, a part of American history dating to the Founding Fathers. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi has more.
Let us pray.
230 years of prayers,
The U.S. House begins each day turning to God.
There have been many struggles, many sorrows, and yet we are still here and able to give you thanks that millions of our citizens live free.
Jesuit priest and House Chaplain Pat Conroy again wins his legal struggle with atheist Daniel Barker. The D.C. Appeals Court rules that we could not order Conroy to allow Barker to deliver a secular invocation because the House permissibly limits the opening prayer to religious prayer, something Father Conroy told me about in 2017.
What I'm required to do by the House rules, which is to provide a prayer at the beginning of a session. That's what I have the power to do. Mr. Barker did not want to give a prayer. He wanted to address Congress.
Father Conroy's work includes offering these prayers.
Help the members of this people's house to seek your presence in the midst of their busy lives.
And approving guest chaplains.
Shine bright your light of wisdom.
But Father Conroy said no to Daniel Barker, co-president of atheist group Freedom from Religion Foundation. Barker reacts to his second law, saying he's deeply dismayed that atheists and other non-believers are being openly treated as second-class citizens. Our government is not a theocracy, and it needs to stop acting like one. For now, the House prayers will stay religious.
May all that is done this day be for your greater honor and glory.
That was Jason Calvi reporting. The Freedom from Religion Foundation says it is too early to decide whether they're going to appeal this to the full D.C. Appeals Court or to the Supreme Court. Coming up, the Democrats respond to the special counsel's report into possible collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign. And the White House is on a roll. The president and first lady participate in an Easter tradition. Democrats are debating impeachment today following the release of special counsel Robert Mueller's report. President Trump says he isn't worried. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi sent a letter to colleagues saying the president engaged in highly unethical behavior. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. The president says he committed no crime, so there's no grounds for impeachment. And though special counsel Robert Mueller found no conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia, Mueller's leaving the question of obstruction of justice to Congress.
It's a beautiful day.
With the First Lady and Easter Bunny at his side, President Trump presided over an annual tradition today. The White House Easter egg roll comes as the president is feeling vindicated. When asked if he's concerned about impeachment, Special counsel Robert Mueller's probe found no collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, but left this question open. Did the president try to interfere and obstruct the investigation? Mueller's report identifies 10 instances of possible obstruction.
There is no question that there is good reason to believe that there was an obstruction of justice by this president.
Is that enough to impeach the president? Speaker Nancy Pelosi has urged caution, but says Congress will do its constitutional duty. President Trump is calling foul on the whole thing. He tweets, "Only high crimes and misdemeanors can lead to impeachment. There were no crimes by me, no collusion, no obstruction, so you can't impeach. It was the Democrats that committed the crimes, not your Republican president. Tables are finally turning on the witch hunt." While Mueller's report doesn't conclude the president committed a crime, fellow Republican Senator Mitt Romney says he's appalled that, among other things, fellow citizens working in a campaign for president welcomed help from Russia, including information that had been illegally obtained. The president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, pushed back.
There's nothing wrong with taking information from Russians.
There's nothing wrong with taking information.
It depends on where it came from. It depends on where it came from. You're assuming that the giving of information is a campaign contribution. You read the report carefully.
And Giuliani also says the president's legal team is weighing whether it should release a written rebuttal to Mueller's report. Lauren?
Mark, when do you think Democrats are going to make a decision on impeachment proceedings?
Well, it looks like they still want to gather more information. They're calling for the full, unredacted Mueller report. And they're also waiting to hear from Attorney General William Barr to testify next week. And they're also calling on the special counsel himself, Robert Mueller, to share what happened. Lauren?
White House correspondent Mark Irons. Thank you, Mark. The Trump administration wants to bring Iran's oil exports to zero. 5 nations, including some allies, no longer will be exempt from U.S. sanctions if they continue to import oil from that country. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo issued the warning to Japan, South Korea, Turkey, China, and India. The administration is trying to deny the regime its principal source of revenue. Pompeo says Iran has destabilized the Middle East for decades, and President Trump says there is more than enough oil available from other countries. Joining me with his analysis is Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief for The Hill. Bob, welcome back to the broadcast.
Hey, Lauren.
Even though he says that there is enough oil, are these sanctions smart diplomatically?
Well, they're going to rub some people the wrong way, but this is the Trump administration being very tough on Iran, very different than the Obama administration, of course, struck the nuclear deal that the Trump administration now has basically vetoed. So this is a bold step, and it is consistent with the Trump administration's hard line against Iran. They really want to strangle their economy.
Saudi Arabia is going to play a key part in this.
Yes, that's right. And I think that we've seen Saudi Arabia and the United States, certainly after the death of Jamal Khashoggi, there was some tense moments there. And certainly some Democrats on the 2020 campaign think we should get tougher with Saudi Arabia. But there is an alliance between the Trump administration and Saudi Arabia.
Bob Cusack, I want to turn to the Mueller Report. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi tweeted last week, the Mueller Report paints a disturbing picture of a president who has been weaving a web of deceit, lies, and improper behavior, and acting as if the law doesn't apply to him. And this evening, she's expected to hold a conference call with the Democratic caucus. So, any tea leaf reading there?
Well, it's interesting. Over the weekend, committee chairman Elijah Cummings, as well as Adam Schiff, they were talking a little bit more about impeachment. So I didn't notice a bit of a shift. I think this is part of their strategy. Listen, I don't think House Democrats are going to move forward on impeachment, but they don't want to say right now, oh, no, we're not going to do it before Barr testifies, before Mueller testifies, before they get the full report. But are they talking about it more? It seems that way.
Right. President Trump, let's move on, and his business organization sued the Democratic chairman, who you just mentioned, Elijah Cummings, today, to block a subpoena requesting years of financial documents, his tax returns, etc. Is this stonewalling, as Cummings calls it, or is it an effective political strategy?
I think it could be an effective strategy because it plays into Trump's narrative of, hey, the Democrats are just investigating me. They're not about an agenda. And all the fights now, they're not really coming in Congress. There's not a lot of bipartisanship, but it's all being decided by the courts.
What are your thoughts on today's Easter egg roll and the little boy who came out and said, Mr. Trump, build a wall?
Well, it's great theater. This is always great theater, but with Trump, it's even more so. And of course, he ate it up and played it to the media, and everyone wrote about it.
And I'm talking about
exactly.
it. Check. Okay, Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief of The Hill, thank you so much for joining us. Up next, the preview of tomorrow's National Catholic Prayer Breakfast in Washington. And Pope Francis delivers his Easter Monday message. A federal judge has blocked part of Ohio's new pro-life laws. Specifically, he ruled against the ban on the dilation evacuation abortion procedure called dismemberment abortion. Opponents call the ban unconstitutional. Pro-life supporters say they are disappointed by the ruling. Tomorrow marks the 15th National Catholic Prayer Breakfast in our nation's capital, an event established in 2004 in response to St. John Paul II's call for a new evangelization. The nonpartisan gathering brings together lay and religious leaders to pray for our country. Joining me now is Mark Randall, event chairman of the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast and executive director of the Pontifical North American College. Mark, welcome back to our broadcast.
Thank you, Lauren.
The National Catholic Prayer Breakfast is in its 15th year. How does this event help shape the importance of the Catholic faith here in Washington and beyond?
You know, I think so many of our events happen in Washington, D.C. And, you know, think of the March for Life and the other events that come to our nation's capital. And so when we wanted an event that would help pray for our nation, one another in the church, what better place than here in Washington, D.C.?
It's been a difficult year for the church, from the clergy sex abuse scandal to Sri Lanka over the weekend, Notre Dame. It is just, it's tragic. And I'm wondering if, you know, you're hopeful that this gathering could help Catholics heal from these recent months.
I think so. I mean, you've been to the breakfast. You get that sense of joy that's in that room. I mean, almost 1,500 people coming together to pray and have fellowship with one another. And I think that's one of the beauties of this event. We all need to come together and know we're not alone in our suffering and the things we're trying to believe in, our core beliefs as faithful Catholics. And the Catholic Prayer Breakfast does a great job at that.
Curtis Martin is the founder and CEO of Focus, and his job is to have university students across the country participate in fellowships. He's your keynote. And I'm wondering, do you think that Catholic groups are under attack on universities?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's in the headlines all the time. We have great groups out there, apostolates that are working to protect them, like the Cardinal Newman Society. But what Curtis has done over these past couple of decades is nothing short of miraculous. They have faithful witnesses. They're well-formed. They know the faith, and they're vibrant. And that vibrancy and joy attracts other students. And that's a great blessing.
Thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Mark Randall, Event Chairman of the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast, Executive Director of the Pontifical North American College. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
I'll be hosting tomorrow's prayer breakfast on EWTN beginning at 7 a.m. along with Jason Calvi. The network will carry it live until 9:30 a.m. The resurrection of Jesus Christ is the most important event in history for Christians. But is there historical proof? As we celebrate Easter Monday, our Rome Bureau Chief Alan Holdren explores that question.
Christians all over the world take it on faith that Jesus rose from the dead on Easter Sunday, but experts say they can prove it.
We actually have an amazing amount of evidence regarding Jesus' resurrection. That is historical evidence. First of all, we have 4 distinct accounts that coincide and complement one another in the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
In those Gospels, the risen Lord greets the apostles and then the disciples.
Jesus appeared many times and in amazing fashion. We should distinguish between an appearance, which is like a vision, which might be kind of like a dream. Of course, saints have had visions of Jesus, but that's different from the appearances of the real risen Jesus with his body. It wasn't just that he made himself appear to the senses of those who saw him, but it was really him.
Father Bob Gall says there's also material evidence.
Most scientifically studied is the Holy Shroud of Turin, which seems to be a product that's of the miracle of the resurrection. It seems to be almost like a photograph of the resurrection itself that includes, of course, Jesus' passion because of the marks on his body of the suffering that he underwent during his passion and then with his death.
The Gospel refers to the Holy Shroud, believed to be the burial cloth used to wrap the body of Jesus after his death on the cross. The Vatican hasn't taken a position on its authenticity. In Rome, Alan Holdren, EWTN News Nightly.
Finally tonight, while the Easter bombings dominated the headlines this weekend, Pope Francis and thousands of faithful celebrated the most holy feast of the church calendar. Today, the Holy Father delivered a message about the resurrection.
Dalla sua luce gloriosa.
Pope Francis says the risen Jesus walks beside us. During his Easter Monday message at the Vatican, he also said Christians are called to be witnesses to the resurrection and notes the first 3 people to learn of Christ rising from the dead were all women. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, thank you for watching. Happy Easter. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Let's keep in touch online. Follow me at Lauren Ashburn on Twitter and at Lauren Ashburn EWTN on Facebook. We will leave you tonight with pictures from Rome and the Holy Father on Easter. Good night and God bless you.